Greetings. I'm Jade Barrett, and I'm reporting to you from, of all places, Great Falls, Montana, where I happen to be playing in a very fun regional. And I appreciate how much effort has been put in by those people who are operating this tournament. So kudos to them. Meanwhile, here we are playing in another online regional, helping ourselves to perhaps master points and a good time to be had by all. However, one of the things that will come up a lot with us is trying to figure out what's going on when we're playing a hand. So today we're going to talk about what that card means anyway. A lot of times where we're looking for a signal from partner, we're looking for something that's glaringly obvious. They throw an ace, they throw a king, or if you play upside down carding, they play the two cards that are easily read. Problem is that most of the time the bridge hands aren't conducive to exact or easily identified signals. A lot of times you're looking at a hand where you really need to give a negative signal and you've been dealt the queen, the nine, the eight. So maybe you want to make a positive signal, that's easy. But what if you've been dealt the nine, the eight, and the seven? So those times you have to give a card where you don't really want to show that you're interested in the hand, but you don't really have a choice. So your responsibility is to play the card that is most easily read. The same way that your partner is supposed to give you a signal, which gives you the opportunity to read the card. A lot of times people look at a card and they'll think that's the two. And then they'll think about what it means. Most of the time, it's easiest if you interpret the message immediately and you do so inside your head. For example, if you're playing attitude signals and you're playing standard carding and your partner plays what you know is the lowest card, thinking not this would be the correct interpretation. It's not important that it's the smallest card. It's important what the card means. So let's start with this. You're playing a suit. Your partner plays a low card. You've decided that this means that they don't like the suit. It's not so much that they're saying they don't like it. It's they're saying not this. A lot of times we trap ourselves into these emotional words like, dislike, want, don't want. That's not really what the signals are. The signals are I have something, I don't have something. The signal is play this, not that. It's not like I want this or don't want this. It's what I need. So that's the first thing, is identify what you need to play. And to do it without hesitation, without hedging. Sometimes you'll have hands where you'll have a couple of different cards, right? Where you might try to mix your signal, like I don't like this and I want something else, or I don't like this and I'm giving count at the same time. That really doesn't work. The signals are supposed to be very specific. And because of that, when you've made agreements with your partners, right, that you try to make your signaling as clear as possible. Sort of like painting, strong, bold strokes, right? I mean, you know how you don't like people hedging in their answers to something. It's like, do you like this? Well, kind of, not really, but maybe. In a bridge sense, it's almost impossible to play with this type of communication. So if I like something, I want to make my signal strong. If I have the 9, the 8, and the 4, and I don't like this, I'm going to play the 4. right? If I need to tell partner how many I have, I'm going to play the 4. If we're playing standard signals showing an odd number. Let's say that I have something like the king, the 9, the 5, and the 2, and partner leads the ace. If I can afford the 9 by looking at dummy or listening to the auction, if I can afford to play the 9, I need to play the 9, the strongest signal. If I play the 5, partner might not be able to read it. If I play the 3rd highest. So when you are signaling an attitude, you play the and you like it, you want to play the highest card you can afford. If you're playing count and you have something like king, 9, 8, 2, and partner is asked for a count signal or expects a count signal, you play the 9, not the 8. You play the card that you can afford. Signaling in and of itself is a situation where there's lots of conversation about it. And most of the conversation is very clear to whoever's talking. Many years ago, when I was playing with my dad, I would always try to signal at count or suit preference or attitude. And the thing that I would discover later on is that the signals didn't seem to affect him. So I would have these discussions where, Dad, you led the ace, I played the 9, I like the suit. I said, oh, well, I thought it might be suit preference. I said, well, we've agreed that when you lead an ace, I give you count or attitude or suit preference, whichever we've agreed to. In this case, we've agreed that if you lead an ace and I play the 9, that's I like it. I want it. I have the king. Whatever words will work with you, Dad. So my father thought for a long time, and he looked at me and he said, well, this leads me to one conclusion. And I said, what's that? He said that signals are very meaningful to the people who give them. He was right. In all the years I've been playing, I see that the people who are signaling are very clear on what the intent of their signal is. The problem is that their partner doesn't always have the same opinion. They don't have the memo of what that card actually means. So this is a real discussion that needs to be held with most partnerships. Not just what our signaling is, but how much signaling we expect. My partnerships, most of the time, signals are in the first 4 tricks, and after that, it's pretty much whatever you can afford. One agreement I have with one partner, Kenji Mikuni, great player out of Japan. He spoke virtually no English. I didn't speak any Japanese. But what I was able to get across to him and what he agreed to was that every card we threw away was a card we didn't want. And that was basically it. And we defended very well, very good partnership. But it meant that we started doing something that we eventually called Zen defense. And that was that we were always looking for what partner needed. If we thought they needed count, we gave them count. If we thought they needed suit preference, we gave them suit preference. If they thought that we needed attitude, we'd give them attitude. And the reason it worked within the partnership is that my partner also would project on me what I thought he would need. So those two things have to be happening. One, you have a partner who is actively attempting to signal in a way that is meaningful, and your partner is looking for that card in the context of all the other cards. Sometimes you'll discard a 7 and you think that partner isn't going to be able to read it. But a lot of times, partner can recognize that that is likely your lowest card because whatever spots are in dummy and what he has in his hand and what the declarer plays. But no signal works unless you're looking for it. It drives me crazy when partner said, well, I didn't see your signal. I mean, it's right there. It's on the table. It's in front of you. didn't see it because you weren't looking. Looking is the first step to good signaling, to good carding. And if you're looking, now you have a chance to identify. So you look, you evaluate, and you calculate. Those three functions is what allows a partnership to be successful and knows how to read the cards. You're not always going to get it right, but you have a lot better chance. Now, there are some agreements that I have with partners that are a little different than other people's. Like, we lead ace for suit preference requests and king for count requests. In other words, that's the signal we're expecting. Other partnerships, I play the ace asks for count and the king asks for attitude. And while this is different than most Americans, it's mainly because people use ace for attitude and king for count because of the mnemonics of the letters. Ace, attitude, K, count. It's really not the best way to play. It's better the other way, where ace is count and king is attitude. And it happens in different circumstances. Like, there are a lot of situations where you have ace kings. You could have ace king third, you could have ace king fourth, you could have ace king fifth or sixth. The longer your suit is, the more likely it is that you need count. So, like with ace king fifth, usually you want to find out if you're giving partner a ruff or not. So I would lead ace there, asking for partner how many they have. If I'm not sure whether I should continue the suit or not, like when I have ace king third, and that's the most common, I would lead the king to find out if partner is interested in me continuing the suit. And this is true whether I have the ace, the king, or the king queen, that when I lead the king, that the primary signal to this is attitude. That's more important because it's unlikely that you're giving partner a ruff with just three, with just ace king third. Your ace king fourth is difficult because sometimes you will need to know whether partner has a ruff, and sometimes you need to know if it's right to just continue. And if you think about the evolution of signals, and back when whist was being developed and the game was evolving and science was becoming part of that game, one of the things that we would do, or the players would do, is they would signal high-low when they were going to ruff. And they would also signal high-low when they had the queen. So in some of the earliest articles about whist, and later about bridge, is that the high-low signal was supposed to be either, suggest that you had third round control of the suit, either by ruffing or by owning the queen. In other circumstances, you'll find that knowing the count on the hand was critical. So there were several schools of defense, and even now that's true, where there are people who are count-based defenders and people who are attitude-based defenders. Personally, I think count-based defense works better in the long run. And that issue I'll save for another time, or if you see me at a tournament, come up and ask, and I'll be glad to have a discussion with you that might last a lot longer than you expected. I hope that this conversation, that this discussion happens regularly for all players. What does the card mean? What is it that you intend the card to mean? And what signal would you like me to give you? On the bottom of your convention cards, and particularly the old ones, there were boxes for primary signals. Well, we didn't check just one box. We wrote in the numbers 1, 2, or 3. So our first order for us, because of our partnerships, was count. The second one was suit preference. The third was attitude. That was the order of importance to us and how we would choose to signal. Other players choose to play attitude first, count second, suit preference third. but it's all based on the context of the hand. Different signals are required when different lengths or holdings appear in dummy. It also depends on the auction. So not only are we thinking about the signal after we see dummy, we really should be thinking about how we're going to signal or what signal we're going to request during the auction. Remember, all defense, all declare play starts during the bidding. So when you start calculating the hands, you start calculating what you need, you look for where the vulnerabilities are in the opponent's hands if they're declaring, and you look for what doesn't happen, like there's no preempt, there's no stamen, there's no transfers. You're looking for all those things when you're defending. You also look for them when you're declaring in the competitive auction. You won't know what the cards mean if you're not listening. And you certainly won't know what the card means if you're not looking. Make sure I see a card in dummy or see a card that's been led by my partner. The first thing I'm thinking about is, what does that card mean? Is it interest, disinterest, sue preference, count? It helps if you're thinking in that manner all the time. As a declarer, I want to know what the signals are between the two partners. And I want you to be focused on the early signal because the early signals mean the most. And in really good partnerships, sometimes they're not signaling at all because they don't need to. They know what the circumstances are. Both players are aware of what the declarer's hand is going to look like. Yeah, knowing what your opponent's carding agreements is vital. Knowing what their opening leads are vital. Many players still play fourth best. Many players still play second and fourth. Ask. You're entitled to know. And knowledge in bridge is power. Sometimes, though, just like everything else, a little knowledge can be a really dangerous thing. I hope you have a great day at the tournaments. I hope to see you around. I'm Jade Barrett, Great American Bridge Tour. Thanks for listening.